Now let's look ahead to the fourth Super Series coming up next week. The return of the Iceman, Gerwyn Price, set to play for the first time since testing positive for COVID-19 at the Premier League a couple of months ago. What are you expecting from the world number one next week?
It's really, really difficult to judge because we've seen some players come back after testing positive for COVID, and it was like nothing had happened. Most notably, Stephen Bunting, who had to withdraw from the World Grand Prix, a couple Euro Tour events, who didn't qualify for the European Championships for the first time in his PDC career, and then only went on and made the semifinals at the World Championship before losing to Gerwyn Price in a match that he could have won. We could have been talking Stephen Bunting just a couple months on from having COVID being the world champion. He was not that far from doing that, and he played some really, really good stuff, especially where it matters. But at the other end of the spectrum, we've seen Glenn Durrant continue to struggle. He's not been the same since having COVID, and it's impossible to know what to expect. I would think that Gerwyn Price would be a little rusty because he hasn't had competitive darts. It's not just that he missed out on the Premier League. He also pulled out of Super Series event. So he's not played competitive darts since around the time of the UK Open or shortly thereafter. So it's been a very long gap for him. And most of the people he will be competing against, with a few exceptions, will have at least played the last Super Series event, although that is now nearly 2 months ago. So I guess everyone will be rusty. But there'll be some rust, but we just don't know what he will look like. And, it's also been the case in other sports, especially when someone's had an extended absence where you really don't know. Don't talk nearly enough ice hockey. We'll be talking some football later. We don't talk nearly enough ice hockey. But it took Mika Zibanejad of the New York Rangers about a month and a half after he was recovered from COVID before he started looking like his former self. And then he was brilliant. Gerwyn Price, you would expect, at some point, will be back to looking like the world number one, because he is the world number one and he's deservedly the world number one. Will he be this week? It's really impossible to say. He might, or he might have 4 days where he really struggles. I think at some point he'll get back to it. It might just take a couple of these Super Series events before he's back to his top game.
Yeah, I think we're going to try and cover as many sports as we can on this week's show, because I've got a couple to note down here as well. You touched on Stephen Bunting missing out on the World Grand Prix, and then we had him on the show just after that run at Ali Pali, getting to the semi-finals and looking back at when he tested positive, and it kind of turned things around for him, getting to the semi-finals, pushing Gerwyn Price close. But other players, it's been difficult for them to come back after that. We've seen in other sports as well that COVID-19 is still a thing, even in sports, live sports, even during events as well. We saw this past weekend in the golf, John Rahm, 6-shot lead in the Memorial Tournament, and then he's out on the course and gets told that he tested positive. I think a lot of people have seen that video, even if they're not golf fans. I've certainly seen it, and it was shocking to see that. And Gerwyn Price, easily the most high-profile case of someone testing positive for the virus in the PDC and missing such a big event like the Premier League. It wasn't just a week event as we know it. It covered the last couple of months, and he's missed out on a lot of darts. And he was speaking to BBC Wales this week. I was reading an interview that he's done this week speaking to them, and he was saying that he's missed darts immensely. And this is coming from someone that said in interviews not so long ago that after the World Championship, winning that, he lost a bit of motivation for darts. So I guess absence makes the heart grow fonder for him. He's itching to play again. He said the first couple of games is probably going to be a little bit tense for him, a bit of rust, as you say. But I think once he gets back into the swing of things, I think we're going to see how well he was last year. I think we're going to see him carry on, because he is a player that has continued to rise over the last 12 months. And even this year so far, I know he's missed the last couple of months, but he's had a couple of semi-finals on TV, the Masters, the UK Open, won a Players' Championship, got to another final as well. And he's put in some great performances so far, a lot of 100-plus averages, high 90 averages. I'm expecting him to come back with a bang, whether it's the first day or the second day. I'm not so sure, but I think having them blocks like we still do with the 4 events, I think it will take him a couple of days maybe to get back into it. But I think by the end of the week, he will be firing again, and we could see him pick up another title.